Sustainable construction, or green building, is the practice of minimising or mitigating the environmental harm caused directly and indirectly before, during and after the construction process. The goal of sustainable construction is to create structures that are environmentally responsible and resource efficient throughout a building's life cycle. There are different definitions of and values around sustainability, with trade-offs inherent to choosing one sustainable practice over another. For example, mandating employees only eat a vegan diet might in theory reduce the environmental impact of your business, but would likely be extremely unpopular, unenforceable, and even if successful, could result in nutritional deficiencies. Providing free, meatless Monday lunches to employees would be a more viable plan, but may have little meaningful impact, especially if the lunches are based on monoculture crops like soy or corn. Sustainable construction is about doing things better, not necessarily perfectly. Sustainability starts in the designing process, but figuring out what sustainable components can or should be incorporated into the project requires a good breadth and depth of knowledge. The main hurdles for sustainable construction are the higher initial costs for green building and construction, even though they are profitable in the long term. To put it simply, more thought and care has to be put into making a building green, but they are worth it in the end. Sustainability's other main effect on profitability in the construction sector relates to branding. This is why greenwashing is so popular. Greenwashing is the practice of exaggerating or outright lying about how sustainable or environmentally friendly a business or practice organisation is to avoid public backlash or to persuade customers to use a particular product or service. However, if companies are exposed for greenwashing, they can face legal action as well as intense criticism, decreased revenue, plummeting share prices. Greenwashing oftentimes involves outsourcing environmental hazards or solving issues in theory, but not in practice. Carbon capture and storage programs implemented across the globe have been particularly controversial amongst environmental groups. Many large-scale carbon capture projects, representing multi-billion-dollar investments on the part of taxpayers, have failed to meet any of their goals for years, whilst allowing large corporate emitters of carbon to absolve themselves. Legally speaking, with purely hypothetical carbon credits. Using unsustainable construction methods allows companies to cut costs and then deceive customers so that they can accrue all the branding benefits of being sustainable, but they're not actually. It's a win-win until you get caught. Even then, greenwashing can be extremely difficult to investigate for customers, who, generally, have to take the companies at their word. Still, greenwashing is an unsustainable practice itself that, when exposed, leaves a brand badly damaged and distrusted by customers. Sustainability is both a value and ethical consideration. The world is an interconnected place. Environmental harm caused in one place can have negative impacts on people and ecosystems around the globe. A tragedy of the commons occurs when every actor in a situation does only what is expedient for them without regard for the long-term ramifications. CO2 and methane emissions are driving anthropogenic climate change by insulating the Earth's surface and raising the global average temperature. Reducing our natural emissions of these greenhouse gases will not make a huge difference to global emissions, nor will it spare our local climate compared to big emitters like the US or China. It will, however, set a benchmark for other countries to follow and stay true to our clean green image. Predictions for sea level rise and changes in weather patterns show that New Zealand will experience relatively mild changes from global warming. The same cannot be said for many of our Pacific neighbours. Microplastics and air pollution are again very unlikely to spell the end of the human race as we know it, but they are already impacting the health of ourselves, our children, and the only habitable planet we've got. Individuals need to reflect on their own personal values, principles and priorities to figure out how they should incorporate sustainable construction practices and reduce their own environmental footprint. If you're doing your own research online, be aware of corporate propaganda and claims that sound too good to be true. But at the same time, keep in mind that many of the improvements we've seen in recent years are cause for celebration and optimism.